and bit of history stuff, right?
Well, you know what it's like. I get caught up. I didn't sleep much last night, so I'm a little bit weird again. Excited with stuff, and then I start reading, and then I forget what day it is and everything. I got caught up with last night. I basically covered. I think it worked out to be about 2007 conceptual theories and hypothesis and changing the same spot. It was quite kind of cool because it was like, that Hippocrates and that they talked about, like, and I think that was like 400 BC or something like that. Apparently, that was written, and then I think it was, in the 40s, we got antibiotics in our guts and everything, and then it was like, when was it? I think it was 80s because it's sideways, and then basically we get to the point that we have in about probiotics, prebiotics. 2014, I think they decided that we definition of actually what a probiotic is, and now we're at 2021 statement, basically stating that all health starts in the fermented foods and healthy gut foods and those sort of. So we went 2,700 years or something to do a full cycle back to where nature knows best. Fermented foods, well prepared foods that are actually good for your for health. And now they're trying to go back to the drawing board and go, what's going on? And this happens all the time. So let me give you basically happens is they go through and say, hey, we got these fermented foods. So we got kimchi, sour, fermented meats, preserved stuff. And they found that all these things provide all these health technology to understand how or why. So then they go through and then they discover these, and then they go, oh, it must be these live bugs that are doing all this work. So then they talk about that, pro meaning that it stimulates, the growth of these live organisms, that when you eat them, they live inside you and then they give you all these health benefits of your microbiome, and it's all about live bugs. And I remember I was working at another company where they were bringing in the probiotics and I was asking them what percentage of these bugs are alive and what percentage of them are dead. What you got to realize is they started going these probiotics and they're going, so in these fermented, this tiny percentage of live organisms, like they didn't care that 90 fermented food was made up of a combination of acids, enzymes, nutrients out of plants, vitamins, minerals, dead bugs. There is a hell of bugs in a live bug culture. But for all of this time, everyone made the assumption that these live organisms are doing, and no one could actually prove that these live organisms actually stay alive. In that most of the probiotic supplements are dead, and most of them, when they come into your body, they die. Will provide these health benefits. So then they started doing these like transfers and stuff, where they started collecting healthy people's poo and sticking it up the date of a sick person, healthy, and then that wasn't really scalable. So they thought a crapsule would be better than a capsule, and then eat it as a crapsule. Yeah, and then but you can't eat because it makes you sick if the bugs infect you. So then they had to sterilize the crapsule. They could create the same benefit as the fecal transfer from dead bugs. So they started all these fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, and stuff like that. What actually happens? Feed on all the foods. It creates all these chemicals and acids and these antimicrobials, and then that kills the bugs. And then the food is full of all those nutrients and full of dead bugs. There's only a couple of live bugs. There's only a few live bugs left in there that are balanced by the other acids and chemicals that are stopped. And that actually works like as a natural and fermentation thing. And the same way that the dead bug, a sausage or a cabbage or, like one of these fermented foods from getting sick. So these dead bugs come into your body and they like colonize. They're not colonize, they code here better. So now we've got all this new research talking about these dead bugs. And what is there? It's what I really cool because they're calling them para-probiotic because their other names is like zombie probiotics or ghost probiotics because they're dead, like fully like necromancer activity where these things are coming in like, and so now they're realizing actually maybe more therapeutic than the live bugs. They're definitely more pretty, can get a more reliable response. They definitely are so much safer because body. So if you got like AIDS, or if you got like your immune compromised.
I love how you always just chuck me in there to like reference me as the.
We're just trying to love it. They talking about so ghost probiotics. They basically are dead, but they're still active. And it's like it goes back to the old immunization one where they used to use the dead organisms to prime the immune system. So these dead bugs provide like compost for your microbiome. They actually provide microbiome needs because they pretty much are microbiome. So they work like a compost sort of system to stimulate. They also contain other compounds that stop the bad bugs from getting work as preservatives in foods, and they do the same thing in your gut to stop you getting infected by bad bugs. Cool. But if you consider that all of the research that we've all gone back from the live bugs, not one study on live bugs has been able to get rid of all the dead bugs doing the stuff. So the only way they know is which is the live bugs and which are the dead bugs. Studies on dead bugs exclusively to see if it doesn't do everything that they think. But they're finding it's covering most of the stuff. If anything, the live bugs, the only thing is slightly stimulate the immune system better because they are live bugs and the immune system goes, right, I'm going to kill these things. And it's actually they believe now that the probiotics don't actually work by living inside you and they do part of your microbiome, that they have a transient effect, meaning that they're going straight through. They may feed on some of your stuff and may make some of these postbiotic compounds, the acids, on their way through, or they may just be on their way through and then die. And as compost and immune challenges for your immune system, and they actually have an anti-inflammatory. So isn't that cool?
So cool.
And it's so much better too. Because 2,500 years ago, they didn't have all the refrigerated storage. They didn't have the refrigerator to take away the probiotics around. Hey, what's that?
I just got a few people commenting on here live, and George is on here saying that he's back and loving the live. So just thought I'd give him a quick shout out.
Oh man, it's awesome. Hey, like I'm loving this because now I can just get excited about that, so I'm not just bugging my kids and stuff about it. Because I try to tell them about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how cool is that? Zombie bugs and the biggest thing in the future for not just food fortification, stuff, everything, man. This is the way we're going to go in the future.
Well, you've been talking about that sort of stuff for years and like talking about how the bugs go dormant and all that sort of stuff. Like you've been talking about it for ages, and it's definitely been a topic that I've... Hey?
1999. That's when I started this weird, because I lost an argument with a heap of scientists that was sitting there showing me all this evidence of how I'm just like, but I had no evidence except the fact that, yeah, but you got dead bugs in there too. How do you know? And the whole time it's just, but how do you know? How do you know it's not the dead bugs doing the work? And no one, and now they're starting to admit that actually, even all this old research, all the live bug research, they were all full of dead bugs as well. Like how much of their Now that we know how therapeutic dead bug, how much of the live bug stuff is dead bugs the whole time. They even sneaky changed the definition. I can't remember what date it is, but they used to be that the live organisms sort of stuff the host. Now they've changed it that if you give live organisms in adequate dose, benefit to the host. They just quickly changed it. Now the probiotic world's trying to get in on the postbiotics. Do postbiotics the whole time.
Yeah.
Because in reality, a probiotic blend. So when you see someone saying, I sell lactobacillus acidophilus 25 billion, blah, actually means is someone has gone and fermented. So they've got a lactobacillus culture, the thing. They then feed it some sugars in a slurry and make it grow so they can get more money, build up some more volume and more raw material. But as they grow it, they're building. So they might be trying to sell you lactobacillus acidophilus 25 billion, but in that blend, they have lactobacillus plantarum, rhamnosus, they might have strep, they might have E. coli in that blend. It's just that they're selling you the that acidophilus, 25 billion per dose. And they kind of make out that that's all. Probiotic blend is a proprietary blend. That's why it's very important if you see people that say like Bacillus rhamnosus GG, and you look for the GG one, or there's a 9V or something, and now they kind of come up with these proprietary blend trademarks. So those blend has a different effect to a certain degree because it is that bug, maybe a whole heap of other stuff that they don't even bother necessarily measuring and disclosing. And I think it was only in the last, I think it was 2014 or something. Before that, they didn't really have their things. They were way too small. And then they discovered that. And in the meantime, we're making and everything using the same technology where we're incapable of actually measuring and knowing what they are, but they're still okay to inject and that sort of stuff because we have a standardization on one bite. It's easy to realize that the whole probiotic market has kind of been a little bit, I didn't want the truth to get in the way of a good story, but now that things are coming around, and now they're coming around back to where Hippocrates started 400 BC, saying there's a hell of a functional
OG. Hippocrates, the original gangster with it all starts from the gut, right? And what with all this new findings here, what do you feel like is the foundational stuff to have a healthy gut, a healthy microbiome? Because if everything is stemming from that, what are some things that you would suggest? Obviously, the fermented foods and whatnot, but I think a lot of people would love the, finer details on what types of foods are best to ferment and, what foods should you have in a vegan diet versus an omnivore diet and that type of thing.
Well, the funny thing is the vegan omnivore stuff, what you want to do is you want to realize that there's certain foods that you're eating and you may struggle. When we change our diet and lifestyle, man, very quickly our microbiome change. And in fact, some of that adaptation can create you're intolerant to the new foods. For example, you might change your diet and then all of a sudden your gut's plain intolerant to these foods. But if you stick with it for a period of time, your guts come really good and in fact can get better. A die-off of the bad bugs and a stimulation of the growth of new bugs, and that creates and some changing. So the point is, what I'm trying to say is what they discovered, you are capable of utilizing the microbiome in our environment to aid those foods by fermenting them. The compounds that those microbes actually what we need in our gut to digest those foods. So this is the craziest thing. So actually entered parts of those foods added into a diet that contains aids the digestion of those foods. Does that kind of make sense? It's like if you don't have the bugs in your guts right now to digest plant because you've been eating meat your whole, which to plant you might react. Well, if I was to add fermented plant diet, Or if I was to add fermented plant into your plant-based diet as you're going in, could aid that transition by aiding the microbiome and assisting it to change. So the funny thing is when you look through history and you look before we had the transport and all that sort of stuff of all the foods where we could have food, the same foods all year round, would have to eat locally and within the season. They would eat those foods at that time, but then they would eat later to preserve them. That actual fermentation of those foods would allow them to have this constant transition in their diet, allow them to change their diet every few months, actually undergo these problems in their gut. That's where I see the future. Yeah.
Well, fully. And like, here's a question for everyone who's on here now live listening or watching the replay. Just like comment below, like, do you even know do you shop locally and do you know the seasonal foods in your current environment right now? If so, like, drop them below, because that's a really good spot to start, is just to eat to your environment, right? But we've got a question here from someone that's dropped it in saying, so a varied and balanced diet is best rather than an all-in-one thing, kind of like vegan or carnivore. So like that's a question. And my answer, is it depends.
Yeah, it's a weird one. A varied diet's probably more important than a balanced diet. They basically eat my 2 and 5, or what is it? What do they say? 5 vegetables and 2 serves of fruit every day, or something like that on the TV. The problem is if you do the same 5 vegetables every day, you're going to create massive problems in your microbiome. So it's good to have that balanced diet, varied diet, where we cycle through different things. So the reality is if we were eating hunters and gatherers, there might be periods of the year where certain foods are available to the animals, are available, and you might binge on them for a certain time of year when they're there, be gathering anyway. So the varied diet, I believe, is more important than having a balanced diet. So I think that's a very important point, and I don't think it matters
apps for that as well.
Yeah, well, I get confused too because
something, I don't know.
Yeah. So you just want to make sure, and that's where eating with a season is important. And when it's out of season, you eat that same food fermented.
Yeah, that makes
so imagine sense. This. So you imagine this. So just say we've got certain like stuff growing like that, and we're binging on it like crazy, and then it runs out in winter. But through winter fermented, we eat that food through winter. The whole time it's priming our gut, get the microbes that live in that fermented food because they like to eat those foods. And all they don't like to eat those foods, they die and they're not there. You know? And so when you put that fermented food with the microbiome and prep your microbiome, so when those fruits come back into season, you've already got the bugs there. Like, we love this stuff, we're ready to go. You know what I mean? So it's like this. Now, it doesn't matter if it's like fruit season or if it's like migrating bison or salmon. It's the same concept and the same thing. So you'll see those places, they'll slaughter certain animals at certain abundant and dying off and that sort of stuff, and it actually fits in with the ecosystem. But then in the moods, like salmon and stuff like that, those migrating salmon, they go right up into the creeks, to spawn and die. And when they die, they provide for the river and everything like that. But also they provide a food source for majority of the native time of the year.
I love that.
They will, like, if you look at a bear, like the bears, that they'll eat these, they'll just binge after they spawn when they're in the process of dying off, because it's the easiest time to catch them and suck it up on that. And that actually gives them enough of that sort of stuff to get them through hibernations and all that. So they'll go through these phases of feast and famine, and that's what I talk about in nature. We have cycles of abundance, and then we have cycles of where we need to avoid it, but we need to be aware of those systems, because at the end of the day, the only reason why human being is the super organism, the actual microbiome that we have that works with us. So if we don't, we're going to get all we're going to devolve or de-evolve or
devolve.
I don't know. That was it. I don't know. What's the opposite to? What would the opposite to evolve be? It's not revolve.
Oh, well, I guess it'll be devolve. I'm assuming, but we've got another question that's rolled in, and so are the vegetables and fruits from coals, etc., do they contain any nutrition at all? Well, it depends on which crops have come in, but it's pretty straightforward. Like there's less and less nutrition in our foods as the years go on because of farming practices.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of stuff coming out these days, even the toxicity that a lot of our farming practices is creating in our bodies. Like I think there was a study the other day where, Roundup and whatnot, there's a lot of those chemicals that are showing up in like 80% of the population. So it's pretty wild.
And that's a lot of the Roundups coming from so hard to avoid. But then you got the antibiotic residues coming from the meat-based stuff. It's a soup, a chemical soup, that we live in, that our body's trying hard. But in regards to the nutrient levels in the food, I think there was a paper published, not 2% reduction in a lot of the vitamins and minerals. We also have about the same level of reduction in polyphenols. The polyphenols are usually attached to the fiber. So when we lose those, and we're getting thinner skins, the pulp, and that's where a lot of the nutrients are. They're these really delicious little orange perfect sticks now that what is it, Norway or something? Anyway, that some king decided that he orange to match his flag, and that's how they bred out a lot of the purple and the different colored carrots, and now carrots because of it. But they used to be like these big, multicolored sticks in the ground. Totally, So food has changed so
kind of like
much.
A lifesaver. One of those icy poles.
Yeah, 70. Yeah, well, exactly. And it's a similar macronutrient profile. If you actually have a look at the sugar content and stuff like that, it could almost be listed as a confectionery if you look at that way. They're just so anyway, we get significant reduction. I think 14 days in storage polyphenols. I think 90% of the polyphenols go within 14 days. But the problem is we're bring them and gas riping them. I think, for example, in Australia, and don't quote me on this because I forget, January, February, and March, I think, is when they pick all the apples. Apple in December. That's from last year.
Yeah, wow.
Or isn't that crazy to think? And you've seen it, and it's not always necessarily from last year. It could, when you get the apples, they're kind of like normal on the outside, but the core and everything's gone kind of weird grey and disintegrated. Yeah. That's the old ones where they've like preserved the outside, but the inside's just like, man, we're seriously we're dying. I'm fully Joe Biden on the inside right
now. Oh, what a way to exit. He's back. He's back. I can't hear you, so I think you got to check. I think it's your network connection's a little bit dodgy. What a spot to cut out right on. I can't hear you still now. Round up. All right. I'm just going to read out this next one while you try and get your audio back on that. Got ya. Can hear you again. Yeah, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. That just wigged out for a minute.
I'm gone. I can't hear anything. No, it's gone. I can't get fucking anything to work. We're done. Can you not hear me at all? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Oh man, I can't hear anything.
Oh, wild. Maybe if you want to shut yours off for a second, then we'll bring it back on. Go back on. All right, you got us? Doesn't look like it.
I'm gone.
Anyway, we got having computer troubles again. All right, so let's jump into this. I'm sure that Matt will jump back in. So with that roundup coming up.
Hey,
Here we go.
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Got us? Yeah, you can hear me.
Oh man, I did the do not disturb. I did that focus do not disturb thingy, and somehow Mick Galley still rings. How does that get through, man? You dodgy little bugger. He's sabotaged. He goes and works for these people and just sabotages my stuff. You know. And he only ringing up to see if we're going to Fuku.
Cool. Well, we're still on here live anyway, and got a couple of things going on. So we've got a few people coming through going with the roundup and whatnot. And then I call them birthday apples, as someone's saying, the ones that the supermarket are old enough to see their first birthdays.
That's a classic.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on today with the fermentation stuff and, farming practices and stuff? Because I'm sure that we could go down the rabbit hole on this one a little bit further.
Well, that's a very good segue, Ty, because the whole antibiotic and the whole pesticide stuff really does get in the way of fermentation, considering it kills the bugs that we're trying to breed. So what's really awkward is the way the world has gone, and these glyphosate residues and these stuff is actually destroying our soils. So we've got these antibiotics coming out in all the poos. We've got all this stuff. So like if you consider that cow poo and animal manure and stuff like that, and them digging up the soil and stuff like that is a major part of, like, for the health of the environment, providing that they're meant to be in that particular land. Water buffaloes in Australia, the design for kangaroos was probably a bad idea for the environment, but you know what I mean. So what the problem is we are destroying the entire biosystem, with these residues running through our system, because we need the soil, we need the dirt, we need the algae, we need, all this sort of stuff through our waterways. We need the whole biosystem to be working together. And the reality is, as a human being, is part of that holistic system. And we are actually, if we're not having, we're full of dirt and we really have to look at our intestinal microbiome as a garden bed, where we have to look at this thing of turning over. We need compost, we need good soil, we need good integrity of the membranes, we need a good coating, we need everything to be working together in order to keep this thing healthy and thriving. And in doing so, we'll create great stuff. So,
bloody oath, man. And so with all of that stuff, right? So some really important things. So let's just say that I'm an individual that has a messed up gut at the moment. I've been eating my normal general diet of, 50% processed foods, and then I get a little bit of protein in and like a serve of fruit and veg once a day. Where would you start with an individual like that? Because that's the most common individual that's getting around at the moment.
Yeah, I'd start looking for various sources of postbiotics. Yeah. And I would look for postbiotics, not probiotics, because this is the thing with a probiotic. They only got the same half a dozen bloody strains. We have thousands of organisms living inside of us, and most of those, or 99% of those organisms can't handle oxygen, so we don't even know what they do in the real world, because it's not as if you can grow them outside of the body and do stuff. So definitely can't grow them, put them in a capsule and allow them to be used as a supplement, because they're not viable. Yeah. But what that means is through postbiotics, they actually are. So with postbiotics, all of these bugs that we've never been able to keep live and get them to work, we potentially could utilize them as postbiotic compounds like ghost and zombie bugs. But so have a look.
Zombie bugs. That's some cool branding that we could have for some sort of supplement.
I know.
Don't steal it, everyone.
No, I don't steal it. The Necromancer range. It's a classic bodybuilder pre-workout, eh?
Yeah.
Like Necromancer, like zombie ghost bug. Yeah, like I even imagine it, eh? But oh man, it's not so far off it. These bugs make people do some weird shit, hey? So
absolutely.
Like a rabies, like it spreads.
Literally weird shit. It'll be weird shit.
Yeah, I know. Amazing weird shit too. But hey, so so to answer the question, you start looking for postbiotic compounds. There's quite a few companies now starting to do postbiotic supplements instead of just probiotics. Don't fall for the trap of 5 billion organisms not being adequate. You need 10 or 25 or 50 billion, because you know what the reality is with probiotic supplements? They can't actually preserve these things, even in fridges. So when someone says at expiry, we give you 25 billion organisms, at manufacture, they can be actually adding 100 billion organisms per serve. That's just out of control because it's not balanced. What we want in our gut is a variety of bugs. We want diversity. We don't want one strain as much as possible, especially knowing that that strain's just going to die anyway and then liberate whatever it is it's full of. You know, so that is, don't do that. Don't fall for that trap of like 25 billion, 50 billion. The more billions, the better, and the less amount of strains. So fermented foods are so much smarter. So start hooking into kimchi, sauerkraut, pickles, you know, all your different fermented forms of foods. Try to go for as nature as possible. And if you can ever find any of these fermented foods made out of certified organic ingredients, and then do it, because you don't want the glyphosates and antibiotics in your fermented food because it's going to kill the bugs before they do the work. And then have a look at all this stuff. There's a lot of research now coming out showing the benefits of acetic acid and malic acid. Malic acid being a big one for the sports industry for ages. You know, people take ketones and things like HMB. They're all postbiotics. Fulvic acid from Shilajit, postbiotic. Glutathione's a postbiotic. Short-chain fatty acids, all the butyrates they're making medicines out of now, they're postbiotic compounds. So we don't realize that so many of the things that have been providing us with health benefits all along are actually postbiotic compounds, and they are found in nutrient. Vitamin B12, vitamin K, they're all postbiotic compounds. But all those sort of things will be found in fermented foods, but will be made in your gut if you have a healthy gut. Branched-chain amino acids is a postbiotic.
Yeah.
Tryptophan.
That's so wild, hey.
It's like all the missing amino, you know, they bag plants and say, oh, they don't have adequate tryptophan, or they don't have enough branched chain amino acids.
They can adjust microbiome to create it, though.
Exactly. The microbiome just makes it and gives it to you and say, here you go, here's your stuff you need.
So just to reiterate that for everyone that is watching and listening, so the old, like, or I'm going to call it the old school way of thinking, is like you consume something and that's what you get out of it, right? So the body's and nature is way smarter than that. And what we're saying here is when you adjust your microbiome, then that will create different compounds and substrates that your body can use. So say you are a vegan and you are deficient in, say, B12 or iron or something along those lines, or an amino acid, if you're putting in the right plant materials, then you're going to be able to create that from your microbiome. Is that correct?
If you've got the right microbiome.
Yeah, if you've got the right microbiome.
And that's why it's so important for us to generally make sure that we have good gut health and a nice, diverse, healthy microbiome. So that way it's capable of taking those foods and making the good stuff. Because the way we get sick from infection is by the postbiotic compounds that are made from pathogenic bugs. So if you fill up with a bug, like, you know, like all the stuff that kills you from these viral infections and stuff is the chemicals that are made from the bug. And so if we have good bugs inside us, then the chemicals that they make are good. The bad bugs make bad chemicals. And that's the difference. And that's also why one man's medicine is another man's poison. Not because of their genetic, necessarily, or their liver or whatever. It's actually because of the way the microbiome can hijack good food and take it down bad pathways.
Yeah, fully. So
it's crazy,
when you get down that path, eh?
Well, the other thing, man, they're finding that immune compromised people, you know, the world's gone a little bit mad with immunity, and there's a lot of immune compromised people there that have had their immune system smashed for various reasons. They're really susceptible to probiotics actually infecting them. Children in particular and the elderly, if they take too much probiotic material, that stuff gets into the body. They can be infected by, you know, like the same probiotics that would be healthy in someone else can actually kill them, you know, make them septic. They get septic. But that doesn't happen with the dead bugs, and it doesn't happen with the fermented foods, which is like, and like I said, 2,700 years ago, these guys are saying, hey, man, this is the way to keep people healthy. Use these natural foods to look after their gut. And then it's taken all this time for our technology to catch up, where we actually have the microscope small enough or whatever that we can actually see these things and go, oh, well, look at that. They were right. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, science, it's catching up. That's the most important thing, is just like if it's spoken about in the right way and it keeps developing in the right direction to
That's one of my
get.
sayings. One of my favorites. Stay out of fashion long enough and fashion will catch up. I wasn't expecting a 2,500 year cycle. Is a bit crazy though. Like I've been stuck in the 80s and 90s for a while, but that caught up for me just recently. Was nice.
Yeah. Now you're trending.
Oh, now I'm like fully back into Hippocrates days now. I'm going, yeah, I've been out of fashion for 2,500 years.
Oh, bloody oath, man. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on with your current findings this week? I know there's a whole heap of stuff, and there's a lot of stuff on the back end that you guys haven't seen us working on, but we're going to share it with you coming forward. So yeah, I'll be dropping some extra stuff in this following week, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I can say yet, but it's a really exciting, massive exciting stuff. Like actually, I'm really pumped.
Yeah,
like really pumped. Like that's why I say I'm not sleeping much at the moment. I just can't. You just lie down and like it just starts going. I just quickly keep cranking.
Yeah.
Into a bit of a head cold, burn the candle at both ends. I'm just so damn excited, but just keep watching. There's that 4x2 rule that I've had to now acknowledge. I don't know which is the 4 and which is the 2, but every time I plan something, I multiply the time by 4 and the cost by 2.
Yeah.
Or I multiply the time by 2 and the cost by 5. Yeah, whatever. I do it the other way around. It's one or the other. I can't remember. But the 4x2, I'm nowhere near where I need to be.
Yeah.
I get too excited, and you got, like I said, there's 2,500 years worth of stuff. 2,500 years, mate. You'd think it would be quicker to read through 2,500 years worth of concepts. But
well, yeah. I guess the smartphone helps out a little bit, but that's a fair bit of info to consume. But
I got to print stuff and read it. My brain doesn't work like on devices. Hey, doesn't make. I need mind maps and
the
scribble.
Scratch pad.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just waffling again now.
Yes.
And we've got to get those samples out to everyone soon.
Yeah.
I just keep, like I said, it's another one of those things I do because then I got obsessed with this stuff and I started looking for specific types of ingredients that I want people to try.
Yeah.
And I'm really keen. So
you guys watching now, anyone that is keen on these samples, I'm going to be inboxing individuals who have, voted on the polls and that type of thing. And then I've got a little survey there for you guys to fill out. So then you can just give us the info that we need so that you guys get these samples and then consume them in the right way that you're the right fit for this. And you guys will give us the feedback if it tastes good, if it doesn't, and what you guys like best, and then we'll go from there.
Be fun, huh?
Doozy. All right, guys. Thank you very much for jumping on again. And we'll be in here a bit more often this week, giving you guys some updates. Happy Friday. Pizza night.
Oh, yeah.